find a goal that excites you. Find a goal, whether it just be a time that you want to run, preferably a race or an event that you want to participate in, and then really think and reflect, whether you do it by yourself or you go find yourself a coach, how your training can feed a good performance for that run or that goal or that event. And I'd say give it a shot as soon as you can. This is the start of running season. It couldn't be a better time to get a race on a calendar and then put together a structured plan.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Threshold podcast. It's kind of surreal sitting here after last week's episode. Would you not agree?
Absolutely. The feedback, the love, we had to come back in your life.
It was incredible. So we're sitting here. It is Friday, March the 20th. I think that Garrett just summed it up there. We'd welcome everyone for listening again. And for those that are new, we're so happy to have you here. We're excited to continue sharing and pushing out running stuff. So we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about kind of training with a purpose, running with a purpose today.
I think that it's awesome because you can apply it to running for sure.
Mhm.
So it's going to appeal to our running crowd, but training with a purpose can be applied anywhere. And so I love this topic. Reground us in who this is for, though. It's for everyday runners.
Yeah.
It's for people balancing running with a busy schedule, and people want to achieve some goals and whatever those goals look like. So I figured it out, and I've spent 25 years running. And out of those 25 years, I spent 12 months intentionally training, which is about 4% of the time, which is hilarious to me. There's nothing bad inherently with that. But what I figured out in the last several months, and then looking back and reflecting on those intentional training periods, it's more fun. It's more engaging. It even makes me more competitive with myself. And so I think I'm excited to talk about this structure because I have a lot to add, even what I'm learning right now in real time. It's just fun.
I'm excited to talk about it. There's going to be a lot to dive into. But before we do that, and before we get into some running news, what about that weather we had since the last time we recorded?
I was looking so I didn't know it was coming until about the night before. And Minnesota was buzzing. We're thinking we're entering spring, and then we get the notification that a blizzard's coming.
We always fall spring, right?
The full spring, the March blizzard happens every time. And I couldn't believe it because it snowed for 24 hours straight. And the only thing I'm thinking about my running training.
Oh, yeah.
I got to go back out there. We got to do this again. Not only that, but after the blizzard, it was freezing cold.
Dude, so cold. Those
negative temperatures.
Those 2 days after, I think, were worse than the actual snow. I don't mind running in snow, but man, I always say, I think that my cold skin, when I run during winter, I get like immune to the cold. And then when it started warming up and it got cold again, I was like, I can't sucks to get out there and do that again. But
I know.
What do we do?
We did.
So are we going to have an April blizzard?
I sure hope not. We'll keep our fingers crossed. I was taught my wife's birthday is in April. Shout out to April.
April for April?
April and April.
There you go.
And there seems to always be a blizzard in her birthday month. So let's hold on for dear life. Weather looks favorable.
Yeah.
We got a 70-degree day tomorrow. Stoked to run in it.
Everyone's going to be outside.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
So, well, good deal. So before we jump into our topic, was there any like running news in the world that you were kind of tracking, following that you think we should know about?
Yeah, there's a couple pieces. I want to call this segment the rundown.
The rundown.
Relevant running news rundown, folks at home.
Love it.
No, I want to talk about Jacob Kiplimo. And I love this segment because I'm new to really immersing myself in racing news. And I know you'll have color to add because I feel like you follow a lot of this pretty closely. Kiplimo could potentially be not only the best half marathoner in history, but he could be going for a potential world record marathon in London in April. Now, Jacob Kiplimo, Uganda runner, I think he's about 26 years old, breaks the world record in the half marathon last year. But there was some type of like controversy that he was following the pace car too closely.
Yeah, like drafting off of it almost.
Drafting off the pace car. Is that real, you think?
Could be. I mean, it's a real thing in biking, so I'm assuming it has to be kind of the same real thing in running, right? You're not facing any type of headwinds. You're kind of, going with the flow of the vehicle. It might be helping pull you along a little bit. So could be a real thing.
Pretty positive last year when he did that. It was like under 57 minutes, I'm pretty sure. Which is crazy to think about, but he does it again, broke the record in my opinion, again. Previous record was 57:30 for a half marathon. Can't really wrap my
No,
brain around that time.
no,
Here's an example to tell you how fast he was running. His first 5K split, 13:28
that's
for
insane.
people familiar with 5Ks. And after that 15K mark, he really, really took off, left runners in the dust. The mile pace for this half marathon were 22.
That's what I can't like. That's insane to even think about. I like try and translate that into just running 1 mile at
Yeah,
4:22. I don't even know if I could run 1 mile with 4:22.
it would be an all-out sprint. It would be an all-out sprint, and my heart rate would be through the roof.
A hundred.
I really wanna try that. In fact, we've talked Strava and segments,
Yeah,
and I got this block out here right
yeah.
outside my door that's 1 mile exactly around. I think we should
So is
just
this
get
what
it.
we're doing? Are we bringing the phone out to the track or bringing the phone out to the circle out here?
Yeah, I think
And
we
we're just
should.
going to do the Kiplimo mile and see if we can go the 4:22.
That's a great idea.
All right.
Give the people what they wanna see. I have a feeling you'll be closer to that,
I don't
4:22
know.
than I will, but
That's going to be a tough goal.
what are we thinking? How do you so I do just real quick before we go to the next
Yeah.
topic, like, how does he transfer that half marathon pace, double the pace, London Marathon, people are picking him to potentially be a front runner to win and set a world record.
Uh, you look at like really fast marathoners, like really, really fast. I think it's like 2 hours, 2 minutes is like that number that everyone's chasing. And so, I mean, we're talking a difference of almost like 5.5, 6 minutes here. And so when you translate that to the entire distance of the marathon, it's a little bit slower pace overall. And for them, and it's like I've even watched some marathon training and watched people that like take marathon and half marathon really seriously. They talk about like seconds in your mile is like a really big difference.
Mm,
And so even breaking that down of like 5 seconds off your mile time over the duration of a marathon distance, that provides them a lot more ample energy and more output of power. And so if he's doing this in the half, I mean, I wouldn't bet against him coming in the full marathon
no
here in a little
kidding.
bit. Yeah. I mean, that's
Cool
that's
story.
crazy.
Cool story for to see him have the the performance last year not ratified,
Yeah.
and now he goes out and breaks it.
Does it again.
What a beast.
That's the biggest right there is like, you want to doubt me? I'll go out there and prove it to you again. So
Yeah, yeah.
good for him.
And then we'll test my French on this one. Matthew Blanchard
Blanchard.
Blanchard
Yeah.
wins the Lapland Arctic Ultra in Sweden.
Dude.
This race is crazy. So 115 miles or 185 kilometers, located in Swedish Lapland above the Arctic Circle. Runners cross the Arctic Circle twice during this race,
Yep.
carry a 50 plus pound sled behind them for the duration of this race. And, he's got two back to back big wins. He won the inaugural 600
Yep.
kilometer,
Yep.
373-mile Montane Yukon Ultra in February 25. And he led most of this Lapland Ultra and finished in 37 hours and 56 minutes. So, what I understand from this is because he won both of these races, he gets a ticket to the Iditarod.
Yeah, the Iditarod 1000, ITI 1000. So that takes place in Anchorage and runs to Nome. That actually took place like 2 weeks ago.
Ah,
Or I shouldn't. It started 2 weeks ago. I'm pretty sure people are the foot racers are still running as we speak right now.
holy cow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So, that's happening right now.
correct. It like overlaps with the dog racing a little bit because the dog racing just finished here as well too.
Yeah.
But so like because there's the ski, the foot, and the bike distance that all starts. I want to say like late February, but the foot guys take because it's 1,000 miles. It takes them almost a month to do.
It's hard to compare because you look at this 115-mile race that he just won, 373-mile foot race that he won last year. He said even in the 115-mile, this Lapland one, that he experienced deep hallucinations, like
Yeah,
the extreme sleep deprivation with the cold weather conditions and just the surroundings. He was hallucinating big time out there.
I think the surroundings are the main thing,
Yeah,
right? I think that when you're just staring at like white space all around you for so long, and then when it's darkness, you don't have any break of just like blank space that you're staring at, you probably start to go a little kooky of what's going on
no kidding.
around you out there. Like seriously,
I
that's
go
a
kooky when I'm night running
yeah,
sometimes because
yeah.
I can't see. Now, you ran a race somewhat similar to this format.
Very similar, very short of this distance though. It's a 40-mile race up in northern Minnesota, but it's the same concept. I'm pulling all my gear, pulling a sled, strapping the harness on, and then we have gear checkpoints along the route when you start and then your halfway point. But I sit here and I try and relate to what he did and 50 pounds of gear being pulled. That's crazy because I
Mm,
think my overall weight to my gear sled was probably 20 pounds. And to
mm,
thinking of doubling that plus some
same.
and running for a day and a half, that's crazy. Good for him. But it also is a lot relevant to the Northern Race of Minnesota, Arrowhead 135, which similar distance, probably similar gear requirements. And so, you know, might be your test of fate to go, let's dabble into it and see what you got there.
It's one
Cause
thing to run, but you had to boil water.
yeah,
You had to pull a sled, you had to boil water,
yep,
you had gear that you probably really, really relied on when you
yep.
think about it, and just that you gotta think about more things, and there's more strategy, I'm sure.
There's a lot of logistics, a lot of strategy too, because you didn't realize too when I started running that race, like I'm pulling a sled and I feel fresh, but my heart rate spiked right away
Ah,
because it's like all that extra effort that you're putting in to like pull that sled around with you there. And so like you have to remember this is kind of like a slow and steady race, and it's just like who can move the longest at the most consistent speed is probably going to get this race done. And he's been a proven fact to do this over and over again. So
not gonna lie, if I had the sled going downhill, I might just jump in and ride it.
that's what people do. That's the trick. Oh,
Seriously?
100%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you think about so like the way that the sled is harnessed to you, it's a roped system. So I put like an X on the back of my ropes, and some people will put like PVC tubing on there so the sled doesn't pop up to you. I didn't do that.
Mm,
So when you run downhill, obviously your sled can't stop it, so it drills the back of your ankles, and so you'll see a lot of people will actually jump into the sled and legit sled down the hills
that's not
portions.
illegal?
No,
Heck yeah.
if you want to smash your gear, it's fine with you. So I ended up doing kind of like the walk the dog format where I grabbed my rope and I held it off to my side and I ran down with it at the same time.
That's smart too, that's
That
smart
worked
too.
out. But
Yeah.
if you were doing 100 plus miles over a long period of time, I think you're going to need those brakes to sled down the
Oh my
hills.
gosh.
Yeah.
It would be welcomed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And really, we want you to, if there's anything that our listeners want to hear about, anything that you guys want us to chop up and dissect, please let us know.
Yeah.
It's been fun, even for me, to get into it a little bit more and go outside my bubble and understand what's going on in the running community, eight Midwest, nationally, and even throughout the world.
Yeah, and I think that as race season really picks up here, because it picks up April through really October, I would like for us to maybe just like kind of hit on, a couple key races that happen, just kind of like what are our thoughts, inputs on how those go, and not just focusing on the elite races. There's so many other news boards out there that are putting on just focus on UTMB or Western states, and that's all they talk about. But I think it's also important to put focus on like the grassroots race of Midwest or some of these races that don't get attention. And like we don't have to do a full deep dive in there, but just give them their credit, give them their light, and the people that are running them as well too, to give them some shout out on that. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. More to come with that.
yeah. But I'm
Awesome.
excited to talk running with a purpose. That's kind of what we classified this as, is just like running with a purpose. But you could break that down as also just training with a purpose, having a purpose of going out there, and why we really kind of talked about this one. And it was kind of a conversation that me and you were having a couple weeks ago. And it was just like, when we go into races or if we just go into training blocks or if we go into whatever it is, what is our focus and what are we trying to get out of that? And why I bring that up is that if we look where I'll talk about my personal experience. If I started where I was running, 4 years ago, I would just jump out the door and I would just run, right?
Mm,
I wouldn't really have a rhyme or reason of time or mileage or focusing on heart rate or any specific workouts. I was just running. Now, nothing wrong with that. I want that to be clear. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I think that anyone that is out being active and moving and whatever it is, more power to them. That's great to be doing that. Where I think that we're coming from on this specific topic is when you are signing yourself up for a race, when you're putting the time, the money, and the effort into going out to accomplish something, why not spend the months leading up to that of going into it with intention of what you're trying to do? Agree?
agreed 100%. I think it's cool because it can be race specific and then it can also be uh, a goal, a
Hmm.
PR, something you want to achieve. I prefer an event or a race because
Yeah.
I think the buzz and the fun and the competitiveness and how dialed you want to get for a specific race. We'll
Yeah.
talk about how to, be specific about a race. It's just so fun.
Yeah.
But you can do it with any type of goal that you really want and put a really intentional training plan together.
100%. Yep.
So
With that. So as we kind of lead into that, I want to ask you. So we just really started putting a structured plan together for you about 6 months ago. So when you look back, before that structured plan going on? What was that training like for you? What did that look like?
I mean, it truly was just kind of running. I would
Yeah.
go out and run to run. Some I would almost go by feeling sometimes, which I think is a trick that our bodies can
Mm.
do is like, oh, well, I feel good today. And by the way, if you feel good and you want to run more on some days, that's a great time to listen
Yeah.
to your body. But there were other times I'm like, I don't feel like running very far today, so I'm just going to go out and do a mile or do 2 miles. That's not the ticket. You have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think a structured training plan helps you hold you accountable and say, even though I don't feel my best, I'm going to go out and do this. I'm going to prepare for it, whether it's mobility, stretching, or whatever. But then I'm going to go out and accomplish it. I look back at the marathons that I run, the half marathons that I ran, and even wild Duluth
Yeah.
50K half-assed. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty transparent with that, and I went to the race. We'll just take Wild Duluth for an example. Went to the race feeling okay,
Sure.
left the race feeling pretty good, after the 50K, and then I ran the half marathon the next day. I felt good about it, but I knew there was more on the table.
Mm.
I knew I left potential and progress on the table because I kinda tried to just fit it into a pretty unstructured plan,
Mm.
and it was almost like a cram session.
Yeah. So what I understand is that, kind of just jumping out the door, doing what you felt fit was right at the time. But when you take it specific to a race that you did, you were like, I felt accomplished for completing it, but you didn't feel a sense of fulfillment because you also were like, I could have probably done a little bit better if I would have taken this more seriously. Maybe I'm interpreting for you, but
Had you been helping me and had we been training together and
yeah.
working together, we would have smashed so many more hills, it wasn't even funny.
And then
I mean, the thought that I'm going in and
yeah,
running in this particular race which has I don't know exactly how much elevation, but it has significant elevation.
for Wild Duluth,
Yeah.
like over the 50K is you're probably getting about just around like under 4,000 total
Okay.
feet of gain.
So a little bit
Yeah.
especially for a Minnesota
Yeah.
race. I just didn't feel good on the hills.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel good up the hills or down the hills.
Mhm.
And so I think that had I trained and had a structured training plan, it would have been a different race for me.
But now this provides you the opportunity to say, well, if I'm going to do it again here this October, you know what you have to do going into it, right?
100%.
Which brings me to the point of now that you have a structured training plan and you compare it to not having anything, do you see a difference of where you're at in your day to day? Or do you, I don't know, what are your thoughts there?
I've had people recently ask me, like, how do you feel? How is progress? I'm like, I feel something. What I feel is my dedication to the
Mm,
plan. I can't predict what's going to happen when we go out there and run this backyard ultra. But what I can say conclusively is that I have followed this plan.
yeah.
The more I've got into the training block, the more consistent I become. So that's actually huge too. I think it breeds consistency to have a training plan.
It's consistency and accountability. I've heard both of those words come out of your mouth a few times here right now, and I think that that is the main thing that these plans provide is that it provides accountability and it provides a sense of consistency. Because when we don't have something in our day to day, we always are able to trick ourselves, trick our minds to provide reasons and getting out of scenarios and situations that we don't want to do. So it's exciting, and where we rotate from here is almost like if someone was coming to listen to this show right now, or if you're walking the street and or someone sees you running and pulls you off to the side and they're saying, "Hey, I'm interested in maybe taking a stab at my first 5K, 10K, ultra distance race," and they come to you for advice, what advice would you give them of like considering a plan or not considering a plan? And when I say plan, it doesn't have to be like this super structured regimen. It could almost just be in like going back to the running with a purpose. Like what would you tell someone like that if they were like curious about how to like take the next step forward?
I think the hardest piece about this is a plan oftentimes should be a goal should come first.
Mm.
And so what I'd want to ask them first is what's your goal?
Yeah.
What do you want to achieve? And I think oftentimes whether the chicken comes before the egg or vice versa, we don't necessarily have a goal in mind. And so I'd want to know their goals and I'd want to ask them how consistent they are. And from there, I think a plan would be tailored to those goals.
Yeah.
And it's also very much tailored to the race they're running as well. So there's a lot of things probably I'd ask, but ultimately, if you want structure, if you want accountability, if you want to improve, I think sometimes when we run without a plan, are we really improving? And how are we tracking that?
Yeah, and I think that that's something I'll touch on here in a little bit because there are some metrics to really show if you are improving or if you're not improving. And they're pretty visible metrics that I think a lot of people just like miss on or pass up on. But yeah, I think that when you are trying to consider a plan, I think the important thing is like you said, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And a race is a good visible option of that, right? You need something going into that. And I think also too, it's like if you're increasing your distance and if you're reaching a world of unknown, like somewhere you haven't been before, like how do I get there? How do I achieve that? Because it's scary. Like if you want to go from the marathon distance to the ultra distance and like say you're making the jump from 26.2 to 100 miles, that training looks a lot different, a lot different. And so I think that when you look at, jumping up in distance, that's a good way to go. So other than that, like any other things that you would say to consider a plan?
You bring up a good point though. When you asked me, and I'm kind of reflecting on it now, like, do I think I've improved? Resting heart rate has decreased
Mm,
by 20 beats per minute from when I started
yeah.
to now. VO2 max is
Yeah.
increased. And then I got some scores, in this Garmin, hill scores, endurance scores. I would highly suggest, I made the switch, and this is not a plug. Maybe someday we'll get Garmin to sponsor something. Uh, I made the switch from an Apple Watch Ultra to a Garmin. Best decision of my life. Almost because it brings me out of having a computer on my wrist, number one. But number two, some of the statistics here, you can really track your progress over time. And all of those metrics that I've been tracking have gone up,
Yeah.
other than the hill score. Hill score is a little tricky.
Well, it's tough to do during winter,
Yeah.
find those hills, right? Because a lot of the hills that we do have transition to cross country skiing and the skiing world. And so you're like really trying to reach to get that hill up. But don't worry, we'll have some time to get after that here soon.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. And, when we talk about like considering that too, it doesn't just have to be races, right? And I think that, we're a running based focused podcast, but I think that this can be related to like any aspect of your life, right? And I know that you mentioned in episode one too of like, work and stuff like that, but like having like a support system or having a plan of like utilizing anything in your day-to-day life outside of running or whatever it is. I know we're specifically relating to running right now, but you could take this topic we're talking about and relate it to so many different versions of what you have going on in your life right now. So I think
Right.
that's just important to mention.
Yeah, it's huge. We
Yeah.
connected at a gym. Shout out to Affect Us here in St. Michael. We probably wouldn't know each other if not for
I don't
that
think so.
gym. And I always relate it even to the gym.
Yeah.
When you're trying to PR in a certain
Yeah.
lift, or you're trying to get better at double unders, or whatever the case may
Mhm.
be, you have to have a structured plan,
For
even if
sure.
it's a simple plan.
Yeah.
But it should be structured.
Going like, hey, a lot of times, like we talk about gyms, we talk about double unders. When I first joined the gym a year ago, I never even touched a jump rope. And I would see jump rope days on the workouts. I'd say, that's a run day for me. I'm not going to the gym that day.
That's how
And
I feel
then
about snatches.
yeah. And then as it progressed and then I started to say, I need to get better at these. I started looking for those days to go in there and start working on that stuff. And as it continues to do that, it started to click. You start to get better at things. And that could be related to running, right? Look for opportunities when stuff gets hard and don't shy away from the hard workouts.
Without an unstructured plan, could it be possibly so much easier to duck those things that you don't want to do, like a tempo run or a repeat run or whatever the case may be?
To answer your question, yes, it is. It is very easy to duck those. Now, am I saying that that is the general consensus for every other person out there? Probably not. I'm sure you have an anomaly of one or two people that are able to say, "I'm dedicated to this and I got this." But when you have a hard workout that needs to get done, it's a lot easier to convince yourself when you don't have that accountability. Here we are again, pushing yourself out there. So yeah, fun stuff. And as we look at, what you kind of expect out of a plan, right? When we're looking at a plan, what are our expectations when we talk about, or what are you expecting out of it? I guess I should say.
One that is surprising. Now, I'm just getting to the point where I'm curious on how we made the plan,
Mm,
how it's made, how are the cookies made, how do we do this? But I'm not going to lie, when I first jumped into this, by having a plan and having a coach, now I'm a big coach fan.
yeah.
I talked to a group of kids yesterday at Minnesota State Mankato, and they asked me about mentors and coaching. And I think I might have said this on podcast one. I'll repeat it again. If you want to go from A to B much faster, you get a coach. And
Just structured, like how are
yeah,
we? What are we expecting from our plan? And what I mean by that is like when we like in the past, right? When we were talking about jumping out the door, right? No rhyme or reason. But when we look at a plan, are we expecting mileage to slowly increase? Are we planning on to have like a progressive build leading into something? Are we in planning to like, hey, say, hey, here's my Monday through Sunday so I can look at my 7 day window and know what I have for that week? Because we also have normal lives, normal jobs, kids and family, and we might have some flexibility to move some workouts around in that 7 day window. But at the same time, we know what has to get done. So it's like, are you expecting that in your day to day when someone's writing you a plan or even you're self prescribing your plan? Are you trying to look at, what's my next 7, 14 days?
1,000%.
Yeah.
And I think this is what I was going to mention here is the convenience factor. Once you get the plan done, now granted, you're helping me during this process as well, but once you get the plan done, it's kind of plug and play. You're
Yeah.
in. We always say that we can be flexible with the plan. Don't forget that. I think one of the most freeing things about running is you're free when you're out there.
Sure.
A plan can be a little bit or seem a little bit restrictive, but we can toss and turn
Yeah.
and switch those things. So I love being able to look at my week, figure out exactly how things fit in. And ultimately, it helps me plan to fit those runs in better because I can see what I'm looking at.
Yeah, there's tons of great platforms out there for you to utilize, right? I know that we're on Final Surge, which is a great plug and play where you can actually take your workouts, implement them to certain days of the week. And then what that does in return is it gives the runner flexibility to look at their schedule and say, well, I know that Monday is going to be a tough day for me and I might have to switch this stuff around. And the coach or whoever's programming that has the availability to lock a workout to say, I'm not letting you move this one because there's intention behind having a long run, back to back long runs where I don't want you to split those up between a Sunday and a Tuesday because we've lost our intention there. But, that is also nice to when we are, 16 weeks out from a race or whatever it is we're looking towards, that we do have that flexibility to move stuff around. So I think that that is a really big key point. And I don't really like to have people look out to past 2 weeks.
I was just going to ask you, break the fourth wall. I was straight up going to ask
Yeah.
you. We kind of go week by week.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes we dip into the 2 week mark. I actually reflected on that last time. Like, there's got to be a purpose behind this.
There is. And I think that it's also too because, what's fresh on our minds, what we talked about is the backyard ultra, right? And that is a slow, progressive build to get us to a high mileage volume, right? And so let's say that you wake up next week and you're under the weather, you're not feeling good, you're not able to get in some of your days, right? And our mileage has tapered off quite a bit. Our time on beat has tapered off. I don't want to go straight back spiking up to that big build when you're trying to recover from something you've been going through, you've been missing some days, because that's where injuries start to come into play. That's where we start to have our fatigue come into play. And then we're not training intentionally anymore. And so it's like, let's take it week by week and see how our week went. And if we're at like, we had a good building week, then we'll build on top of that again. If we're starting to hit a plateau, maybe we'll figure out what that plateau looks like and add a little bit to that. But if I start saying that, hey, let's write something 8, 12 weeks in advance, and I know that, where we're at week 1 and where we should be week 12, there's a lot of space for
Mm.
errors to happen in between there. And if we just say, no, you have to be there at end of week 12, we're setting ourselves up for, like I just said, lots of stuff, lots of bad stuff to happen. And more than likely, we're probably going to go into that race either overtrained or injured. And that's not a good thing to go into. And so, yeah.
It's nice to have blinders on too and just say, this is my week. In fact, this is my day, and really zone in.
It's nice though when you look at the phone Sunday night or Monday morning, whatever it is, and they had a whole new 7 workouts pop up on there, and you got to go through all of them one by one to see what's on there and see what's in store for the week.
Not gonna lie, kind of excited.
Yeah, it is. So you just touched on coaching, and you just mentioned with anything in your life, if you want to get from A to B faster, get a coach on board. Now, we're not plugging coaching. We're not even saying that coaching is your absolute only option to go to. But if someone were to come to you and say, I was looking at a running coach, would you say that there's positive, negatives, if there's a middle ground in there? I'm your coach. You're not going to hurt my feelings. You're not, because I've had a coach in the past. I don't have a coach anymore. I self-write all my own programming. And because I got into a spot where I think that I'm comfortable doing that. But for someone that is, getting into it or wanting some type of accountability, what does coaching mean to you?
I think I would tell them absolutely if it's the right match. We knew pretty quickly that it would be the right match for this coaching kind of partnership that we have. And there's even going to come a time where I feel like I'll be confident in potentially doing this myself and helping someone else.
Would
But the
love
way I
that.
look at coaching is a coach is often one, two, three, or more steps ahead of you. So when you look ahead or when you look at where you want to be, that coach is probably or should be there. And that's a good way to evaluate a coach as well, is what does this person bring to the table? Do I connect with this person well? I mean, we just kind of clicked from the get-go.
Yeah.
And also, is this coach a couple steps ahead of me that can teach me something? If the answers are yes, I say absolutely go for it. Now, this is coming from a guy that has had business coaches and running and fitness coaches, and I just believe in the structure because I think you can get to your goals faster. But also, and we talked about this a while ago, it's just fun to have accountability. It's fun to have community. When I was training for that Wild Duluth 50K, there was a little bit of community
Yeah.
in that, and it was always really fun. But the majority of my training, I was spent by myself. Now we have me, we have you, we have Smitty, we have all of these different people
Yeah.
that get to run and share stories and share gifts and memes and stuff like that. And it just makes it more fun because
Mhm.
you have more community. And so I'd say go for it for those reasons.
And when we look at coaching and we break this down, right? What are we expecting out of a coach? Is it like you said, you want to have a good relationship with them, but you also want someone when you're like, if we talk about trail or road, right? There's a lot of coaching organizations out there that have different coaches that specify in different types of terrain, different types of distances. And so are you looking for someone that's super hyper focused in what your focus is? Because I know that your focus kind of moving forward is the trail, I believe, right? I don't want to speak for you. Maybe you'll go jump back on the road again, but I think that there's a lot of trail in your near future. And so if someone came to you and said, I want to run a 50K. Are you looking for someone that has specific experience in that? Or are you just looking for any type of running coach out there?
I want someone that has specific
Yeah.
experience. I think there's variables that are too important to pass up with someone that doesn't have that experience.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna stick with trail, probably pretty predominantly.
Yeah.
Kiplimo makes me want to run a half marathon. But I'm gonna stick with trail, and I think because you had that experience, and also because you run this race that I had
Yeah.
signed up for, it was kind of a no brainer for me. But I would say to that person, has this coach done what you intend to do prior? Do they
Yeah.
have deep experience in that area?
Yeah. And I think that what you mentioned, a portion, like I don't think you said the word exactly, but communication, right? And communication is something with coaching that I take very, very seriously. And it's something that I felt was lacking a little bit in my first coaching run, which made me go self programming. And what I mean by that is if someone is willing to spend their time, their money, their effort, that I feel like a coach should also be willing to spend their time and effort in providing them as much as they want to give to you. There's a lot of coaches out there that have these cookie cutter plans that have just a copy and paste and let me throw it up on a board and let them run with it. And if you need something, send me an email. And I had a hard time with that because, it almost just made me feel like I was just another number on their athlete sheet. And I wasn't someone that they were like specifically trying to push to have me achieve what my furthest potential was. Because the workouts were very generic, communication was very poor. And that was something that I looked back and reflected on and was like, I don't want to ever provide that to an athlete. If an athlete has questions, I want to be able to provide them answers in a timely manner. Because the last thing that I wanted to have to myself was if I had questions or concerns on a workout or a weekend coming up and sending them an email and waiting 72 hours for a response. Well, my 3 days of training just went by and none of my questions were answered of what that workout looked like and I'm sitting there trying to figure it out on my own. And so I think communication is huge to have. And I think that having transparency, most coaches will ask for like, hey, let's sit down and have like a preliminary talk to say, what are your goals and what is your running history? What are you trying to get out of this? And if they're not doing that, maybe look at something else or someone else out there.
It's a lot of coaches now that will coach virtually, which is cool if they follow and tick the boxes of some of the things you just mentioned, because you can have a virtual coach. I love that we have this thing where there's close proximity, so we can go on runs together, which is
Yeah.
huge. Would love to go. Would love to say that that's best possible scenario for
Yeah.
you to be able to go for on runs with your coach, but There's a lot of virtual coaches out there that will coach from a distance. And if they can get communication right, they can get the deep dive right, and they can get spending the time and effort that you're spending right, then I think it's a doable format. But I would be inclined to say find a coach near you if at all possible, because I just think there's more bang for the buck there.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm with you on that. I've coached people in Tennessee. I actually still actively coach people in Tennessee right now and write them programming. And when they come back to me, it's just as important as me having a relationship with you that's 5 minutes down the road as it is with them that's 1,600 miles away or whatever it is, 800 miles away. But they're having issues in their plan. We'll adjust, we'll modify, we'll figure out what works for them to get them to their goal, and we'll make it work. So it's like virtual, yes, I'm with you, like having someone close that's there. But I also think that if you have a coach that's willing to be intentional at the same time to work with you, even virtually, like there's no issue with that as well, too.
Right.
But I'm with you. So in regards to that, though, as well, too, now that's a lot of expectations out of the coach and vice versa. Expectations out of the runner, I think, is a big thing as well, too, right? If you're signing up for something, I think that again, it's your money, your time. What you want out of it is what you should get out of it. If you don't want to put a lot of effort into it, fine. That's your decision. That's your choice. But I think that if you are willing to really take this next step forward, what are the expectations that a runner should give and provide? When I look at it, it's like you should be able to have a clear line of communication that we just talked about, being honest, having some accountability, and like being transparent with what realistic goals are for you. That's what I look out of it. I don't know if you have a different thought of.
I think a runner in the coach runner relationship has to be honest. But I think that might be one of the harder things, because it can be hard, especially when pain comes, when potential injury
Mhm.
comes. The runner may not want to throw off their training
Yeah,
plan or worry the coach. And I think you have to do it though. You're putting yourself farther in the hole if you don't be honest when something crops up. So I think that honesty, transparency, and communication piece is absolutely huge.
that's a really good point because a good coach will help navigate and modify around your injuries, modify to some low impact stuff, whatever it is. You're spot on there. Like you have to put your ego to the back. You have to put your ego to the side and be like, this is where I need to like communicate that, hey, things aren't going well. Something might be going on. Can we figure out what we can modify to keep this progress going? But I need to slow down the stimulus of the running right now a little bit.
It's the same at the gym. I was so surprised when I first had an injury at our gym, and I
Mhm.
was honest with the coach, and the coach's like, "That's okay. We
Yeah.
can modify this workout."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, okay." And sometimes I don't even think we know what that might look like or how that might feel. So I think that that piece is huge. I also think that as a runner, we got to be accountable
Yeah.
to the plan.
Well,
And I think sometimes that plan is really hard to be accountable to. Fun story, I went to Hawaii with my wife a little bit earlier. We were kind of well into our plan, our training
yep.
structure, and it's nice, and the food, and the scenery, and I didn't run near as much as I wanted to. Not to mention the heat difference really caught me off guard going from cold to hot. I'm like,
Yep.
I'd rather run in cold right now. This is really weird. But you got to be accountable to the plan, and you got to try to stick to the plan. And if you can't stick to the plan, that's another piece of where honesty and communication come in, is why and how do we make sure it gets dialed in. I remember coming back from Hawaii and kind of had an individual fire let under my butt. But the whole time, so wow, this was going on or this happened. Once I got back, that plan, I just had it in my mind. It wasn't necessarily a specific conversation we had. I just knew that I had to stick to the plan.
Yeah.
You're putting effort into making a plan for me to improve. I have to be able to be accountable and be consistent and stick with it.
It's like the 90-10 rule or the 80-20, some people call it. I like to go with more 90-10, but it's like if you're accurate within 90%, 10% deviation from your plan is not going to kill you. It's not going to kill you, right? But
Right.
I think that just like that accountability sense of like knowing that when you're getting off track is like, all right, let's figure out as quickly as possible how to get us back on the rails and keep moving forward on a good trajectory. So,
One other thing is I think they have to have some autonomy and responsibility as a runner outside of the training plan
yeah,
specifically. So mobility work, I asked you a question about mobility early on. You sent me a plan, a full
yeah,
plan, but it wasn't necessarily plugged into our training plan, which I think is the right reason. But I take that plan and say, I'm going to do
yeah,
mobility on these
yeah.
days. Or when something crops up, I'm really going to focus on this particular mobility exercise.
So no
There's
one's
got to
gonna,
be some creativity
yeah,
there.
no one's gonna hold your hand through it. There has to be some times where you have to say, well, I have to take responsibility here, which you've acknowledged, and I think that's important for everyone to do out there. So as we kind of transition to like specific racing types of training, like, and what I mean by that is, we talk about trail, we talk about road, there's endurance, there's FKTs, there's, you know, biking, running, swimming. There's so many different things of endurance sports on there. But I think the training specificity is so important. And what I mean by that is you actually brought this to my attention last week, and I'm going to throw the spotlight on you right now because you said, I'm getting ready to run a backyard ultra in 4 weeks, and that's all on trail. And I haven't spent a whole lot of time on trail recently right now.
Scared me.
Yeah, you're like, maybe I should get back out there. And I think that that is like what we're talking about here right now is like, if you're training for something specific, maybe train in the conditions, the environment that you're going to be racing in or running in, whatever it is, right?
You can bet that I'm hammering Crohassan, I'm hammering Elm Creek when it's
Yeah.
good, and we're about to reach a point as long as, knock on wood,
Yeah.
there's no more snow where that's gonna be possible. What I didn't give myself credit for is we have a nice little trail. It's like 0.7 miles right over in
Hmm.
my backyard here, and I run on that trail a lot, but I'd been really gravitating towards the road, and it was good for me to identify that, saying, "What's different here? Oh, I'm not going out to my trail as often. It's covered in a whole bunch of snow." I'll tell you what, you don't realize until you do it how poor trail conditions can
Oh,
get, and when they are poor, how hard it is to run on them.
really tough.
Kills the lower
It's
legs.
really hard, especially with snow, especially when it's like compacted and then it starts melting. So you got a hard base, but a soft top, and your
You got
feet.
a leg up though
Oh,
because you're a hockey player. I literally watched you, no spikes on your shoes whatsoever, just glide across some ice that any other normal human would fall on their face on. I'm like, I'm looking at you like, dang, hockey player.
man, it's a lot of when anytime I see a nice icy patch out on the road, I always have to slide on it. It makes it fun out there. So, and then when we break that down, so that's the terrain specificity, but then we also look at like a time specificity that comes with the races. And what I mean is ultras can vary, you know, 50Ks can be 8 hours sometimes. 100-mile races can be 38 hours sometimes.
Wide range.
Marathons, you're looking at the fastest guys 2 hours, kind of the back of the packs, or that's 6.5 hours, right? Your fastest or slowest marathoners are still going to be done before some of your fastest 50K runners, right? And so when we talk about, you know, a specific race type in regards to time, it's really a variation of like how much time can you spend on feet leading up to that, right? And so is that something you would agree with, right?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think time on feet can be really, really important. And sometimes we think that we got to run at a certain pace all the time when really what we should be focused on is time on feet. And sometimes I have a stand up desk, and sometimes I'll drop the stand up desk. And I'm like, this isn't necessarily what you want. You want time on feet. You want to be able, whether you're standing, you're walking, you're moving, time on feet is really important. So it's created a lot of color with our workouts because we don't run the same runs over and over.
No.
We're constantly within a week, we're constantly switching things up a bit. I want to go back to something you said though. When it comes to trail versus road,
Yeah.
what are some of the factors that a runner should think about or prepare for differently from a trail versus a road? Or what types of things are going on inside your body that you should be paying attention to between the two?
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, if you talk about the difference of trail versus road, I think the main thing that comes to mind, and buddy, you mentioned Schmitty earlier on, he said this exact verbiage to me when we were running out on a trail. He said, it's like, this is really poppy and really, really poppy. And what he meant by that was just like, there's so much like ups and downs and like uneven footings. And like you might be running a flat, but your left side of your body might be lower than your right side of your body. And so what that's doing to you, it's also like making you fire different muscle groups. It's making you fire, different types of like energy exertion, like your heart rate might spike up at different spots that you weren't expecting to. And so when you compare to the road, like you look at like the world major marathons out there, there are 6 of them, I think it is. I could be wrong. I'm sure I'll be fact checked, but you know, the elevation gain on 5 of those besides the Australian one, it's like a couple 100 feet, maybe. Couple 100 feet. These ultras, these trail stuffs, you're getting a couple 100 feet within a mile a lot of the times. And so you're having to focus on like uphill training, downhill training, you're having to working on like technical footing, all of these different things where the road is just like, let's put our head down and hammer, just
Mm,
like hammer down. Which brings us back to like what we were just talking about is the time on feet versus just like mileage training. And what I mean by that is like a marathon, for example. You'll see a lot of people program like certain distances. Like, let me program for your long run 16 miles. And within that 16 miles, I want you to do 1 mile repeats with 1 mile recovery for the whole duration of it, right? You're not really seeing I personally don't program that, and I have not seen a lot of people programming like, "Hey, your trail long run is I want you to do 1 mile repeats out on the trail." Where in comparison, they might say, "I want you to get 3 hours done at like let's call it a 4 out of 5 or 4 to 5 out of 10 RPE, perceived exertion." And what that means is that it's accounting for going back to what you said, the uphills, the downhills, all of these different things, because I might be working really hard on an uphill to where if it was programmed as a mile repeat at 7 minutes, I'm not going to be able to do that going up a hill. It's not possible. It's not possible. And so if you knew that you had an 18-mile long run on a trail, it might take you 5 hours. It might take you 5 hours. And is that beneficial to our training? I don't necessarily think so. And so if you break down the two, obviously you have big terrain differences between them. But I also think that there's big training differences in like mileage, time on feet loads, where marathon's a lot of mileage focus. Trail is a lot of time on feet focused, right? And so you've been seeing a lot of our programming just being like, here's our set time that we're running today. Here's what we're trying to have for perceived exertion out of this. But we also do have some really specific workouts in there as well too. And I think that that's nice to have a diversity, right? I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
when it comes to explaining now, I've even been kinda trained in a different way when someone says, "Oh," yeah, and I appreciate the folks at the gym and just people in my life saying, "Oh, what are you running today?" You know, "How much are you running today?" And instead of saying X miles, I say 2 hours
Yeah.
or an hour and a half
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be. And there's that switch. And we talked early on how I thought that was a welcomed switch. Now I know I need to be on my feet for an hour and a half running. I don't necessarily have to worry about pace.
Yeah.
I'm worried about rate of perceived exertion again, like you mentioned, and I'm trying to hit a target.
Which comes with like heart rate training, right? And like when we talk about backyards or we talk about 100 milers, right? No 100-mile race, I shouldn't say no, because there are some anomalies of, like, javelina and, like, Western states where these guys are probably in zone 3, zone 4 majority of the race, but, like, if we talk about, like, Superior, which I'll be running in September, like, I'm gonna be in zone 2 90% of that race. Now I'm gonna have a good chunk of time where I'm gonna spike up where we're the beginning of the race and going up the uphills, but it's like heart rate training and that perceived exertion, what you're getting out of it is really beneficial because, there's no reason to go out and train with your heart rate at 160 every time you go out there. You're not getting any benefit out of that. If every time you step out of the door and your heart rate's at 160, slow it down. Like, forget the pace, forget what's going on. And what I suggest to people to do, go on your watch, change your settings, get rid of the pace, get rid of the time, and just change it to heart rate. Change it
Love
to
it.
heart rate. And when you're running and you look down and your heart rate's in that orange or in that red, stop and walk and get it back down to the green, get it back down to the blue, and reset yourself. You're going to have more of an aerobic capacity and benefit come out of that in the long run than just going out and running it as hard as you can every time, right? Now, I'm not saying that that doesn't work for other specific things, but for what we're talking about, long distance training, that's really like you should be spending a good chunk of your time in zone 2 training, a
Mhm.
good chunk of it. And so that brings us to like, kind of cross training, right? Because early on, I got so hyper focused of like, I have to run, I have to run, I have to run. We live in this stats and analytic driven world of like, I want to be able to pull up my Strava and see my mileage increase and see like I've hit this segment at a faster time and I've seen my monthly build over and over. And it's like, I have to like tune that out and not worry about that, because there are also a lot of other avenues besides running that provide good aerobic and anaerobic benefit to our training. You mentioned the gym. We do CrossFit. It's a phenomenal way to cross train.
Absolutely. It's great with community as well. Our gym has some of the best people in the world, but ultimately it hits on, for me, different areas that might shoot up my heart rate a little bit more than a hard run would. And it's a lot of work in a brief area of time, but then there's also some strength movements that I find, if sometimes this might not be the case for you, but sometimes when I'm sore from running, I'll go to the gym and I actually am less sore the
Yeah.
next day because I moved, I stretched, I did some mobility prior to the workout, I worked on some strength stuff,
Mhm.
and it almost helped me in some form or
Mm.
fashion, which is
Mhm.
really interesting.
So we talk about when we think about cross training, I think about a few things, right? I think about strength training. I think every runner should have strength training integrated into their plan. I mean, even if it's body weight movement, have strength training integrated into your plan. I don't care if you're just doing squats and split squats and like calf raises on your stairs or whatever it is, do it. It is like the best way to help with injury prevention, like strength training, helping those glutes strengthen up, helping your quads, your hamstrings, whatever it is, your calf muscles, it's all going to help because running's a single leg movement. And if you're not taking time to focus on helping strengthen those muscles, you're going to have breakdown. So strength training, I would say number 1 to supplement running. When we talk about cross training as well too, I think about you've mentioned I play hockey. I play hockey once a week. That's a great every time I'm done, it's like great anaerobic workout because I'm out there for hockey, I'm rotating with guys, so I'm out there for a minute to a minute and a half. I spike my heart rate up. I come sit down on the bench. My heart rate goes back down. I do that 20, 30 times throughout the thing. I'm having all of these little intervals throughout the workout up, down, up, down, up, down. I get done. And those are some of my highest training loads for the whole week right there. And so cross training doesn't have to also it doesn't have to be like, let me do this specific workout. Let me do this. It could also just be, let me push my kids in the stroller and go on a walk.
I longboard in the
Yeah.
summertime.
Longboarding.
We talk about Peloton, but like you said, you can integrate it anywhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just crank out. I like to do challenges with my kids where we crank out burpees or we crank out jumping jacks together. I mean, it can look like a lot of different ways. I think the question though is, how do you fit it all in?
That's again that goes back to what we talked about last week of balance. It's like, how do you fit it all in? And so when you look, that's the nice thing about having a structured plan that comes out to you 7 days in advance to where, when you sit down with your coach and you say, hey, I can't run 7 days a week. I can run 4 days of a week. And the coach might kick back and say, great, let's do 4 days a week, but can we find a fifth day to do some type of cross training? Whether that be you're going to go out, you're going to go on a bike ride, whether you're going to go for a swim, whatever it is. And to give you a great example, you sent me a voice message 2 weeks ago and you said, hey, I missed the run tonight, but I think that I went out and I played some basketball with my son instead. I'm like, you probably got a better workout playing basketball than you did on your run right there, to be honest with you. And so it's like, I'm not saying that like, hey, let me just intentionally be like, I'm gonna pull this run off and I'm gonna go play basketball with my son. Do it. That's great. But stuff happens. And if that stuff like comes into play, there's no problem with it. Like any type of movement that keeps you going is great to have. But like if we were to say, pick 4 or 5 things that are great, strength training, biking, swimming. Biking's great for recovery. It's low impact. It has, it's great aerobic capacity. That's good zone 2 training as it is right there. Everyone's on like the Peloton and the Zwift as well now
Oh
too.
yeah, the Zwift now.
Zwift's
You can
huge.
go anywhere on a screen, but you
Yeah.
can go anywhere.
I was like
I
looking
think
at
it's so
Strava
cool.
the other day and I saw that I just ran with a buddy and then all of a sudden he's in London biking 2 days later. I'm like, what's going on with the world we live
And if you
in?
glance at them, sometimes you think they're actually there.
You
Does it
really,
really do? Oh, okay. No, this is a video game type of scenario.
it is
That's
trippy.
so awesome.
It is trippy. So, yeah, I mean, cross training is like, there's so many ways to go about it, right? So exciting to have. Something that I think that we have really tried to take a good focus on is recovery as well too. What are your thoughts about recovery?
I think it's the single most important factor in a plan because you're putting a lot and we're progressively doing it, right? So we build a foundation with a training plan. where you should feel good about your progress as you get through the training plan, that you built a foundation that sticks. I think the foundation is the most important part. And maybe it's the hardest part of the training plan. Those first couple months that we were training, my body was acclimating.
Yeah.
Now I feel like it's acclimated well, but you still need to rest.
Yeah.
You still need to recover. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to take a day and
They,
do nothing
yeah.
and sit on the couch or sit on your computer chair and play video games, but you take that day and you maybe lessen the impact. You maybe change something. You can literally put cross training and recovery kind of in the same vein and have something be a low impact recovery style training. I'm not gonna lie, I have a hard time with a full rest day
Yeah.
as a human. That's just the way I was built or the way I'm built. But it's nice to have recovery based days. And what could that look like? It could be a hike instead
Yeah.
of a run. It
Yep.
could be a slow walk. It could be just a mobility day, which if you've done yoga and you've done mobility, it's a workout, but it's a gentle workout.
Mhm.
And so it almost feels very much recovery oriented. And I think people miss that. I'm a huge MMA fan, and there's a fighter that says a true professional is confident enough to take a rest day
Oh, I
and
like
take
that.
a recovery day.
I like that.
And it can be hard. It's almost the opposite sometimes,
Yeah.
because with running and with athletes, they're built different. They want to work as hard as they can. Sometimes it's harder for them to take a rest or recovery day than it is just to push it nonstop.
And we joke around a lot because we're like, what are rest days? What are rest days? And for someone that has, like you mentioned, it's hard to just turn it off and just to sit around and do nothing for the day. But like, I love what you said, a hike, a walk, even your runs where it could just be like, I'm just going to go out and just move the
Just
body today.
shuffle.
No expectations, just move the body, put a little bit of time out there. And it's like, that didn't put a lot of strain on my body out there. You see recovery runs, you see tons of recovery runs, recovery bike rides, whatever it is. But recovery is something that I think is something that's overlooked a lot, especially when it starts to get nicer and starts to get warmer. And as you get closer to a race as well, too, people start to think that, hey, I'm getting closer to this race. I need to make sure that I'm ramped up as best as possible. When really, it should maybe be the reverse a little bit. The work's been done. You should maybe start trying to take care of your body so you get to the start line as fresh as humanly possible. When I also think about recovery, I think about, you mentioned mobility. Stretching's another one that I think that people lack on a lot. And stretching can be one of those things that, seems tedious, seems to be a lot, but I've just found that, if it's late night and my kids have thrown on a show before they're going to bed, I'll sit down on the floor and I'll just stretch for the 20 minutes while they're doing that, right? Just find an opportunity to where it's like, okay, I could sit on my phone, I could doom scroll beyond belief right now, or I could get on the floor and I could stretch a little bit or roll out. So
There's no reason not to stretch.
I agree.
It's one of the hardest things to maybe get your head around, but you can fit it in so many different places. You don't need tools. You don't need to be somewhere in a specific place. You can stretch anywhere. And oftentimes it feels really good too. I wanted to, and I know I'm relating a lot back to the gym, but I also think it's important. You look at like a rest recovery day at the gym
Mm,
for someone who wants to stay consistent at the gym, just go 50% on the wad, on whatever you're doing, just go 50% that day. I learned that the hard way through injury, burnout, all of these different things, because I always wanted to go as hard as I could
yeah.
because that's the type of environment that you're in and it's fun to get pulled into that. You don't have to.
And you've mentioned you're a competitive person. I'm a competitive person. It's hard to go into those scenarios and be like, all right, I'm going to scale this back and not take it to the full intensity. But again, I have to just be like, put my ego to the side. What's the bigger picture here? The bigger picture for me is to running. I go to the gym to supplement my running. I'm not going to get no one's gonna come pat me on the back if I finish 5 seconds faster than everyone. I'm just doing like, who cares? Scale it down because you're the only person that's getting the benefit out of that. You're not out there to impress anyone else, and so it was a hard thing to overcome to be like, what's it matter at this
It
point?
doesn't.
Doesn't matter.
I had the mindset switch that if it's intentional and you walk into that gym and you know you're scaling back, kind of cool.
Yeah,
It's kind of cool to have that type of confidence to say, I'm not doing exactly what I would typically do, but I'm doing it intentionally because of X, Y, or Z.
I
And I think it's a flex.
totally with you. So here's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to do just like a little quick sneak peek of, you don't have to go into all the bells and whistles, but just kind of give like a quick rolling breakdown of what does maybe a training week or a 2 week week, and give specifics of like, what does a week look like for you and what does an overall scale look like for you leading up to your backyard? And then what I want to do is I'll kind of answer back and provide, what does it look like leading into like a superior 100? So you're getting the different versions of like maybe something that has less intensity to something that has more intensity of just like what does a normal training week look like?
Give me an example when you say overall scale. What do you mean?
So what I mean is like for our backyard, we're doing a progressive build, right? So, when we look back and if we look back at our week by week, 6 weeks ago, our weekly volume might have been 45, 50 miles, where we're up to 70 miles a week right now. And so we've kind of seen this mountainous slow climb, slow climb. And so, when you look back and you relate, does like you building to where you are now get you able to push through these bigger, longer weeks?
I couldn't believe when I look at Final Surge a lot, but Strava just makes it
Yeah.
so easy to look at it too. And so I looked at Strava and I looked at the progression that we had in the last 6 weeks. And it's a nice kind of even kind of upward trajectory that we're building on time on feet and
Yep.
running time. And I remember those previous weeks when 6 hours seemed like a lot of running time in a week, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We're up to 11, 12, and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
It is coming right around the
Mm-hmm.
corner is my prediction. Um, and it doesn't feel unmanageable.
No.
And I think it honestly felt harder for me at the beginning when I was just starting to run 6, 7 hours, 8 hours in a week was more challenging than it is now. And I think it's because we have that foundation. But I think when you look at a week, I saw this awesome Instagram of this guy that basically summarizes some of the way that you coach and that we look at. And he's like, what does he say? He says, long run, fast run,
Yep.
and what was it?
Easy run.
Easy run.
Yep.
And if you have those three components, probably a couple more easy runs than if we're running 6, 7 days a week.
Yep.
So probably more easy runs than that. But you got the easy run, you have a tempo or a fast run, and you have a long run. And if you can put those into a week and also add some fun stuff like hills and things like that, now you got a good mix.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Because like if we look at your training right now, it's probably 4 or 5 days of easy runs. We probably have one type of tempo-ish run. If it's not a tempo, it's probably a run with some good strides in the middle of it. We have a long run and we have a hill workout. That's probably consistently of what our weeks look like leading up to the backyard. And we're not going to really deviate from those four different workouts. Easy, a tempo or stride, a hill, and a long run. The volume's just going to increase on those slightly. That's
Yeah,
all.
you go
That's
easy, hard, long, easy, hard.
yeah,
But what I would tell you is I could not believe when we were doing tempo runs how quickly I was improving by running hard 1 day a week.
yeah. It's because all the zone 2 training that leads you up to that, and people don't realize that that's what it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is if you just go out the door and if you just run as fast as you can, or not even as fast as you can, but if you're just running to where you're, like, completely if you can't have a conversation, you're probably running too hard if you're not having a specific tempo or threshold workout, right? That's when you should not be able to have communication on these runs, is where it's like you're actually trying to do an intentionally hard workout, but if you're just out there to run, you should be able to have a conversation at any given point of that run,
1,000%.
any given point. And so I think that that's an essence of where you're at leading in the backyard. And I think that, if we talk about any other run, so like a 50 mile, a 100 mile, 100K, whatever it is, something that, I tend to do is that if someone's looking to run faster, like for myself, like trying to run a faster 100 mile, you know, I'll probably integrate more tempos and thresholds and less easy runs. So I'll probably still have 3 days of easy runs, but I'll have 2 days of intentional workouts. I'll have a hill workout and have a long run. I'll still run probably 6, 7 days a week, but we'll scale back the volume. I won't have as much time on feet, but my intensity will increase. I'll
Mm.
have more harder intensity. And the intentions of that is that as we get closer to the race, we'll probably taper back that intensity, increase the volume, and that volume should be easier for us. We should be able to run faster longer because we spent time working at a more intense pace. And so it's exciting to see what can come of it. So, the backyard is a completely different training of what we'll be training in the summer, but it's two different worlds. And I think that goes along with coaching of like whatever it is you're working for, there's different tailored plans out there. Don't settle for a cookie cutter plan because it doesn't work the same way for everyone else. So,
Guys, what's fun about this is we're really close to this backyard.
mm,
we're about to do a simulation run,
Yeah.
which is essentially what it sounds like. It's a simulation of what it could look like out at the Backyard Ultra at Elm Creek. And I hope and I think we're going to be able to provide some content and
Yeah.
some behind the scenes looks at the simulation. But all this leads to the big culmination of the backyard, and we'll make sure that we provide some really great content on that race as well. But it's just so fun to talk about these concepts because we're actively applying them
Hmm.
right away in real time, and hopefully we can bring the listeners and subscribers along with us and take it from there.
Yeah. I mean, I think this has been a really fun conversation to have. I'm sure we could talk for another hour about this, but I don't want to make people's ears bleed about us just talking about training over and over and over again. If I were just to sum everything up, it's like just, have some type of structure in your plan. If it's not coaching, just go into a week and have intention with your week, right? Look at it as I'm running, I'm training with a purpose. It provides so much opportunity for you to move forward with. It's don't forget, like, don't worry about the judgment. Don't worry about the stats. Just slow down, and you'll see improvements come along with that when you do need to push and stuff right there. And it's prioritize cross training, prioritize recovery, prioritize strength training, and then just find a good balance that works for all of that stuff.
Couldn't
And
agree more.
yeah,
Couldn't agree more. And I think the other to add on just one thing, find a goal that
yeah,
excites you. Find a goal, whether it just be a time that you want to run, preferably a race or an event that you want to participate in, and then really think and reflect whether you do it by yourself or you go find yourself a coach, how your training can feed a good performance for that run or that goal or that event. And I'd say give it a shot as soon as you can. This is the start of running season. It couldn't be a better time to get a race on a calendar and then put together a structured plan. And I think that's what it's all about.
we said find a goal, and our goal is to run a 4:22 mile like he did in one given time. And
Yeah, we're gonna do it.
so, if anyone else can do it, why don't you just video it and then tag us on it so then we could see that we're not the only ones struggling with it? That'd be hilarious.
I want to see fastest mile. I want to see fastest mile times for anyone who follows, anyone who knows Tanner and I, anyone that's close to us in our running community. I want to see fastest mile time posts between this episode and next week's
Oh
episode.
my
I
gosh.
think it's great. I think you're going to blaze a trail, and I think I'm excited to watch.
Oh no, I
Um,
haven't done I haven't run fast in months now. This is gonna be crazy.
be good, guys. Thank you so much for following along. If you're new here, thank you for joining us
Yeah.
once again. I'm Garrett DuPont. This is Tanner Elmore. Follow, subscribe, share this with someone you run with if it resonates with you, and we appreciate you guys all joining for episode 2 of the Threshold podcast. So with that, as always, run for someone who can't today.